So today we are taking the Coffeemel that we are making and racking it into a pitcher and stabilizing it and then putting it into a secondary vessel to chill for that time. So I say Coffeemel. It's actually a traditional that we've made using 3 pounds of honey and D47 yeast, which is a fairly good yeast. It's supposed to be very good for this particular climate up in Washington. However, it didn't go dry as expected. So I'm very curious to see what its reading is today, just to see how it's going, because I think it's going to be a little bit sweeter than we want, but that should balance out once I add the coffee later, once it's stabilized and the coffee can infuse into the brew and balance that out. If nothing else, I'll add some lactose into it in order to add some creaminess along with sweetness, and that should be absolutely amazing. So first things first, I'd like to get a taste and do a proper reading on this brew. So as you can see, it is still quite cloudy. So she needs some time to settle and everything, and stabilizing will help out with that. Pleasantly sweet, very honey forward. Not very mellow. Of all the meads I've made so far, I think this one's the most mellow. Ever so slightly effervescent because it still has the CO2 gases inside, which, that'll happen. But it's overall quite lovely. I'm excited to see what happens when we infuse coffee with it. Before I drink it all, we need to take a reading. Hate it when I lose my pipette. All right, so it is at 10.4 bricks, which means this means that the gravity reading itself is 1.012, which makes it kind of a semi-sweet mead. And as I said, it's pleasantly sweet. It's not overbearing whatsoever, but it's definitely not completely dry. But again, it's pleasant, so I'm not unhappy about it. But chances are that this yeast is all the way done. So if I wanted to go dry, I would have to make a slurry or a yeast starter, so to speak. So I would take about a cup of water, add another yeast to it, something like EC1118, so that it would really beef up the yeast colony and get to that dry state. I'd add it to that water, and then I would slowly add in bits at a time some of the brew itself, because if I put yeast directly into the brew now, the yeast is just going to die. It's too much of a shock of the system in order for them to create a colony and make alcohol. Since there's already alcohol in there, they can't do that. So starting them in water and then adding bit by bit so that they get acclimated to the environment would be the way to go. However, I'm not going to do that today. I thought about it, I really did, but I'm not gonna. That is lovely. So today we're gonna put into the pitcher and then add some stabilizers. I stabilize with potassium sorbate and potassium metabisulfite, also known as Camden tablets whenever you use those. So, which reminds me, I need to get a teaspoon or a half teaspoon in order to... One moment, Bobo is going. Okay, now we can proceed. Sorry about that. That's our robot vacuum Bobo going about. He just decided to start making noise because I forgot about his schedule. Ha! Anyway, so as you saw during this lovely little time lapse while Bobo was going, I picked up the potassium sorbate and Camden tablets. I had to double check how many Camden tablets to use for my 1 gallon batch. And I need 0.5 to 0.75 grams of potassium sorbate. So I had to get out a little measurement and a spoon in order to, a measuring cup bowl, if you will, a spice bowl. That's what it's called. A spice bowl in order to measure how much potassium sorbate. So those are sanitizing and they should be good to go now. And I can dry them off with my sanitized towels. It's really annoying when things aren't where you think they are in the bin. And you know, we love our lovely black bucket because it does do all of the sanitization. Sometimes it's hard to find stuff in there. So, first thing is first, we have to crush our Camden tablet because it dissolves better that way. And 1 tablet per gallon. Okay, and next, 3/4 of a gram of potassium sorbate. If I can open the bag. And that's 3/4 of a gram. It is not much at all, y'all. So I'll be hanging on to this bag for forever and a day. All right, so I've got that ready to go. Next is the actual racking. So we'll move this. Up here. Grab a chair. Spray the nozzle. Gotta sanitize everything, right? And I forgot that I can't use this hose because it's too small. Apologies. This will only take a few minutes because I also have to heat up some water to open up one of the other hoses. However, I still need this hose because of racking from the pitcher into the next vessel. So, but we have the correct vessel awaiting. So while we're waiting for the water to boil, you may be wondering why there isn't a video of the beginnings of this particular brew. That would be because I made this last month with my niece. And, you know, we don't show children on this channel. So I made it with her, you know, teaching her some chemistry and biology. She's 13 years old. And hopefully some of that stuck. We'll see how it goes. All right, so we have our freshly boiled water. Let that sit and become malleable so that it'll actually fit on the spigot. Now, why do I not just go from the spigot into the vessel? because it would allow for a bit more oxidation, not oxygenation. We want oxygenation at the beginning of the brew. Now, at this point, because there's alcohol, it would be oxidation, and it would end up tasting like sherry and that kind of bitter attribute, and we don't want that. There we go. And she is on. So now we go from one to the other. I'm gonna take off the lid because she is done. And we're gonna let her rip. That's enough of that. And as with any brew, there is some loss due to the lees, but you look in there, I don't want to drink that. That's a lot of nastiness in there. So that gets poured out. However, now we have just over 4 quarts of liquid. It looks like it's about 4 liters on the other side of the pitcher, which is great. And now we add the stabilizers. One of the best things about these stabilizers is that it's also going to help with the lees cake formation, so that when I go into the other bottle, it'll settle once again before I bottle again when I do my final bottling. And so there's less chance of there being lees in that. But here's that. Stirring gently. And what am I stirring gently with? My spattle. It's a spoon and a paddle. It's a spattle. All right. That looks like it's mixing in well. And now to rack into its aging vessel for secondary fermentation and secondary. It's conditioning / stabilizing, getting ready for infusion. Again, Star San, don't fear the foam, but you don't want to drink the foam either. Well, you don't want to drink only foam. Looks like I'll have a good bit of foam to deal with the racking process. Let's put down some towels since we know we're going to get wet. And for this racking, we will use the mini auto siphon. And this should go pretty quickly. And there's the volcano effect I was telling you about. And that is all that will fit in the bottle. Looks like I get another taster. Because she be full to the brim. Full to the brim. And now we let her sit for 3 days to a week so that everything settles, and then we start the coffee infusion. So we'll let that settle and see y'all next time.